We got big news yesterday, obviously, with big news at the top of the week with the Saints and Derek Carr agreeing to a 4-year, $150 million deal. Guys, we know how these contracts go. It's not actually a true 4-year, $150 million deal. Mike Florio has explained that it's essentially a 3-year, $100 million deal. It could be as short as a 2-year, $70 million. Who cares, right? Let's get into the actual aspect of what Derek Carr brings to the Saints offense that had a breakout player in his rookie season like Chris Olave and obviously somebody like Alvin Kamara as well.
I think to me what it brings is stability. Do I think Derek Carr is great? No. But do I think he's an upgrade over Andy Dalton? I do. I know there's been some people saying it's just it's the same guy. I disagree. I think Derek Carr is a cut above. I think if you were sort of ranking the quarterbacks, forgetting fantasy for a second, if you're just ranking the quarterbacks from a pure skill standpoint, right? You've got the Mahomes and the Josh Allens and the Joe Burrows. You've got the elites of the elites, right? And then I think there's like kind of a middle tier. Like I think he's. And I say this with no respect, I think he's like Kirk Cousins. I think he's Daniel Jones. I think he is a solid, above-average quarterback that if you surround him with the right pieces, you can win with. For our purposes in fantasy football, I think this is good news for Chris Olave, to your point. Top 25 wide receiver last year in terms of total fantasy points. You think about Derek Carr over the last 2 years, he's been top 5 in the NFL in terms of both deep ball rate and deep completions. So this is somebody that is fairly accurate when he throws it deep. We know Olave loves to sprint down the field. They got some nice run from Rashid Shaheed down the stretch as well. And anything they can do to stretch the field to open up stuff underneath for Alvin Kamara, for Juwan Johnson. If he comes back, we're going to find out what happens with Juwan Johnson as well. But I think this brings stability to a franchise that has some playmakers and is in a division that's easily winnable.
Yeah, and I think you made the point that I think Derek Carr is one of the most stable, kind of predictable quarterbacks in the league, where he's going to be between like the 11th and 19th best quarterback in the NFL. And so the question becomes, for the Saints, are they in a spot with the rest of their roster where that makes you a playoff favorite, a fringy contender? And I think they probably are because the defense is so good. I also think it's the right time to go in for someone like Derek Carr when the rest of the division is just a complete disaster. And now the Saints are the clear favorites in the division. And then if you're the favorites in the division and you're going to get a home playoff game, then anything can happen.
I'm with you, right? When you look at it, it seems like the Bucs really might roll forward with Kyle Trask. We know the Panthers are going to be active in this draft, we believe. They were also another suitor for Derek Carr, active in this draft to get a rookie quarterback. The Falcons are a little bit in no man's land. Maybe they like Desmond Ridder. Maybe they take a guy in the top 10. I mean, Derek Carr gives you a floor that should win you this division if you're the Saints.
Connor, can we just quickly talk about Kyle Trask? Is this going to be a real thing? And what's Trask? How good is he?
I mean, I don't think there's much of a ceiling there, right? You're going to need to surround him with a lot of talent. Unfortunately, they have it. Godwin's there. Evans is there. They need to do a lot of work on that offensive line. That's my biggest question when you're trying to develop a young quarterback in Trask. But they used the second-round pick on him. When you draft a quarterback in the second round, they were saying, this is our guy that's going to take over after Tom Brady, and they're going to give him that chance.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, by the way, you know, somebody who saw SEC defenses throughout his college career, like he's not somebody that put up big numbers in the Big Sky or something like that. Like who knows? Like I mean, there's a little bit of hopefully some to your point. He's got a lot of talent around him. They want to bring in a veteran that we're going to talk later in the show with my Combine column that's up on Rotoworld.com, NBCSportsEdge.com right now about sort of rumors that I heard. But one of them that we probably won't get too far into is that they want to bring in a veteran to compete with Trask. Drew Lock was a name that I heard. Could you see? I think there's some other guys like that. Not like a, could you see Taylor Heineke there? Like there'll be some. But I think this is, barring something kind of crazy, I think this is Kyle Trask's job to lose.
Yeah.
Last thing on Derek Carr as well. The NFC is wide open. The favorite in the NFC right now on BetMGM are the 49ers, who we've got no idea who their quarterback is. And if it's Trey Lance, we've got no idea if he's actually any good. And they're the favorite in the NFC. So, I mean, it's not unrealistic to me to think that the Saints could, if a few things break right, be in the NFC title game.
And that's a good point.
I agree. I was just going to say, you just sort of think about it, right? So the Eagles are going to lose a ton of guys on defense in free agency. As good as their offense is and as good as my ride or die Jalen Hurts is, the fact of the matter is the defense was so important at Philadelphia this year, and they're going to lose a lot of guys.
They lost their staff.
Right, exactly. So it's going to see, how do they reload? There's certainly questions around Dallas, and rumors that Dalton Schultz won't be back with the team, and we'll see what and we'll see what happens with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. We should mention, by the way, that we are taping this show on franchise tag day. So there may be news. You may be like, well, what, just so you know, we're taping this at noon on a Tuesday. Of course, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So as breaking news comes to the show, we'll talk about it. But there's a chance that players will be franchise tagged or not after we are done taping. But right, the Giants, were they a little bit of a mirage? My Commanders, who knows? And then you start, the Packers probably going to be without Aaron Rodgers. You sort of go through all the teams and you're like, every one of them has warts.
I love you've thrown the Commanders into the NFC title discussion. Just kind of slip them in. You know who the fourth favorite is right now in the NFC? It's the Detroit Lions.
I bet it.
And that's fair.
I like the Lions.
I think that's a good pick.
But the fourth favorite in the AFC is like the Baltimore Ravens, who they're probably going to be better than the Detroit Lions. And you've got obviously Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow just anchoring that conference. The NFC is completely wide open, and it seemed like the Lions, the Saints could absolutely make a run.
So the trickle effect of this move for the Saints as a whole.
Are you saying the Commanders shouldn't be in the NFC title?
I don't think they should be in the first sentence.
We get a new owner.
You count on
all
one
bets
hand.
are off.
You get a new team and new players?
Have you ever been at a party? Have you ever been at a party where there's like one annoying guy? Don't look at me. Have you ever been at a party, not one that I've been at, but a different party where you've been there, there's been like one annoying guy.
I mean, kind of go all the time.
Right, exactly. And then as soon as that person leaves, there's like this huge sigh of relief, like, I thought that guy would never leave. And just like tension all deflate. Again, stop looking at me.
Are you talking about Dan Snyder or Carson Wentz?
That's what I'm talking about, either or.
Yeah,
no,
true.
I'm talking about Dan Snyder.
Full of
I believe there's such a black cloud over that organization and franchise because of the ownership and because of all the issues that I think that once that sale happens, and my expectation is that it will, that then, rainbows, flowers spring up, you have no idea. Leprechauns are playing in the fields. You have no idea. It's going to be a whole thing. Fairies are sprinkling dust all over the equipment. It's going to be Nirvana.
Yeah, well,
it's going to be Atlantis.
I think unless the new owner of the team is Lamar Jackson, he's going to own and play quarterback. I think you probably.
Which is on the table.
It's on the table.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
We will get there. One quick trickle effect move of this is, as expected, Jameis Winston's going to be released. I mean, you have to wonder, is Jameis days as a projected starter long over, going to go somewhere, try to rebuild that value?
I don't understand why he didn't play last year.
I don't either.
It was very odd. They were very coy about the back injury and what was going on there.
I do not think, you can tell me from a talent perspective, but I do not think Jameis Winston's days as a starter in the NFL are over, especially when you look at the landscape of who some of the starting quarterbacks are out there. Jameis Winston would have been a better starting quarterback you can't tell me he's better. He's not better than Desmond Ritter.
He'd be the best quarterback on Connor's team. The
right
Jets.
on the Jets. I mean, he'd have been the best quarterback on the Panthers last year.
A lot of teams.
I mean, right? Exactly.
We don't know if the Dolphins are going to have one with the situation with Tua. You could just go across the board and look. This team could need a quarterback. This team, on and on it goes. So
right.
Yeah, you should get that chance.
I mean, again, I don't think this would happen, but is he worse than Jarrett Stidham for the Raiders? I don't think so. I know the Raiders are in the Rodgers mix, and there's talk about they might trade for Mac Jones. But if you were the Raiders, wouldn't you rather have Jameis Winston than Jarrett Stidham, unless they believe they can develop into something? Anyway,
he'll have a market at the end of the day.
And last thing there on Winston, just to talk about that, because you mentioned this as well. The Niners, I don't think we're going to get into this, but in essence, the Niners basically came out, and John Lynch said this, they need a veteran. They don't know the timetable for both Trey Lance and Brock Purdy's return from injury. So they're going to need, whether it's a camp arm or something, they're going to need a veteran in there just in case those guys aren't ready for the regular season. Jameis is one of those guys that could make sense for them as well. Baker Mayfield, another guy, they need because they're going to move on from Garoppolo.
Yeah, I was going to say, who makes a lot of sense in that kind of role is Jimmy Garoppolo again.
But no, they're done.
They're
done. That's not going to happen.
That's done.
Another quarterback at the top of the market, but a little bit different situation. He's not a free agent, of course, is Aaron Rodgers. And as we sit here today, the report is Aaron Rodgers spoke to the Jets on Monday, which to do so, the Jets would have to have the Packers' permission because Aaron Rodgers is under contract with them. As we've sat here to record this morning, I know Dan Graziano has said that they will speak today. So this is going to be an interesting situation to follow with the Jets, who waited on Rodgers and let the Carr sweepstakes play out in front of them.
Yeah.
It's risky business.
Do you want Aaron Rodgers? That's what you're all in for? You want the
Absolutely.
Aaron Rodgers experience? Yeah, I guess he is that good.
I mean, you're in the AFC.
There's no real alternative now.
What's the alternative?
Jimmy Garoppolo is the alternative, right?
That's not an alternative.
No, it's an alternative. It's just not a great one, but it is one.
Look, there's a short list of teams that you can say this phrase about and mean it be legitimately. This team is a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender, and I would argue the Jets are one of those teams. The defense is legitimate. The offense, other than quarterback, is legitimate. They have real playmakers. They need to upgrade the offensive line. They need to make sure the offensive line is. But it's somebody like Aaron Rodgers, who is a veteran quarterback, who's comfortable out of the gun, who gets the ball out quickly, who can read a defense really, really well. Like, Rodgers makes a ton of sense. Now, it's a short-term solution, obviously. And there'll be all the Brett Favre jokes as well in terms of, following the, Packers legend going to New York. But look, there's a lot of tea leaves there that make sense. One of the things that I put into my column that was a rumor I heard, and again, this is not me reporting news. This is a rumor that I heard. Like, all my rumors are just sort of late night at bars, just people, BSing. But what I will say is that the rumor I heard was that Woody Johnson, especially the owner of the New York Jets, wants Aaron Rodgers, wants people in the seats, what's going to get him the headlines and people talking about the Jets and sell out that stadium. And 12 is one of those guys that does that generates headlines, that puts butts in the seats. Joe Namath has come out and said he's willing to give up number 12 of the Jets if Aaron Rodgers were to come there. And the other thing that I'll say is obviously the Nathaniel Hackett piece, right? That there's, it is well known that Hackett and Rodgers enjoyed a very good relationship in in Green Bay. Hackett's now the offense coordinator of the Jets. Like, there's a lot of pieces here that make sense.
Two things. One, it would just be so perfect if the Jets, they did the Brett Favre thing, and now they're going to do the Aaron Rodgers is a lot better than Brett Favre was going into that season. And then, secondly, I got to give this a bit more thought, but I think if the Jets get Aaron Rodgers, I think that makes them the second best team in the NFL behind the Chiefs, right? With that defense, with Rodgers, with Wilson, Hall, Elijah Moore has got so much talent.
Would they be the favorites in the AFC East over the Bills?
I think so. We're going to see what the Bills
really interesting
do.
See where those lines go.
With the Bills have got a lot of moving pieces in terms of their roster,
a lot of free
but
agents.
I think that they're on that same pegging. I think with the Bills and the Bengals, maybe they're not clearly above those teams, but I think they're right there. And which is kind of scary to think about.
It's crazy.
They've got just the defense is legitimate. It's a championship level defense, as Robert Saleh said and pushed towards the end of the season. And all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers, who is 1 year removed from winning back-to-back MVPs, and I think towards the end of the year started to show a bit more Aaron Rodgers-ness after a slow start. He's dealing with the injury. I think that they'd be right there.
Again, he had rookies out there. He had and by the way, inconsistent. Like, it wasn't even like, okay, you're going to have Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs and Alan Lazard all season long. Like, Watson missed a bunch of games at the beginning of the year. Doubs was banged up. Lazard missed some time. In addition to having a whole new receiving core, he didn't even have the same receiving core week after week after week. I agree. I mean, I think, look, if I was a member of the New York media like Connor J. Rogers is, I would be salivating at the thought of a year of Aaron Rodgers press conferences.
It have to be. It's a dream scenario.
Exactly.
For all the right and wrong reasons.
It's going to be unbelievable. But Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest all-time quarterbacks ever to play the sport. I mean, you can't. You can't name 5 quarterbacks that are better than him all time.
No, and that's the best spot for him. It gives him the best chance to win a championship. If he goes to these other teams, what's he going to go? Is he really going to go to Vegas? Is Vegas going to win the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers with that defense? No.
And him and Josh McDaniels is an odd match, in my opinion. I think that would be kind of...
They might be the worst team in the division.
Yeah.
Even with Rodgers.
I think it makes a lot of sense, and the fact that Hackett's there, I think probably gives him some comfort in terms of sort of a familiar face and knowing what they'll run. And so, listen, the other piece of news that sort of has come out around this is just that, quote unquote, Green Bay is done with Rodgers.
Very interesting.
That they are just, whether they're annoyed with all the will he, won't he, I'm going into darkness for 4 days, all that BS, or if it's just they took a good hard look at their roster and saying listen, we got to start tearing this down. We got to see what we have in Jordan Love, which is, by the way, one of the reasons why Favre went to the Jets is because Rodgers sat behind Favre for years, and they were just basically ultimately said look, we got to see what we have in Aaron Rodgers, which ultimately proved to be the very right move for the Packers.
All right. We will see on that one. If that one goes through, obviously we'll get into deeper discussion.
What I would ask everyone is to pay attention, because this will be an undercover story. This won't be a lot. There won't be a lot of talk about this.
Twitter search it.
Just Twitter search it, set up a Google alert, because there'll be every once in a while a little piece of news that squeaks out about it.
Notifications on.
Notifications on. ESPN probably will put something, on their ticker, maybe.
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe
ESPN2, I would think.
Maybe
I'm
on
thinking their
E2.
main channel.
But,
News?
probably on news.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But,
Connor's giddy about this Rodgers situation. Look at him. He can barely contain
Do you
his
understand the
excitement. He wants
quarterbacks
it
I
so
have watched play for the last how many years?
like Mike White. Mike White had a moment.
Oh, yeah. He got 3 games before his ribs exploded.
just as long as we're speculating here, let's pretend Aaron Rodgers comes to New York. What happens to Zach Wilson in that moment?
I think they'll keep him because of that relationship. I really do. I think that's the only scenario where you can hold on to Zach Wilson and say, maybe there's a prayer we can get something out of this.
That he sits behind Rodgers for 2 years, learns something. Maybe Rodgers takes him under his wing or something like that. They
have the relationship that you can do that, where if you went out and got Carr, you can't do that. You went out and get, a Tannehill would be a little weird. So, I
agree with you because what it does is it does 2 things. Number one is it takes pressure off Zach Wilson. Aaron Rodgers starting, right? You know what I mean? But it also, it no longer becomes a question at a press conference.
Nobody's
saying,
talking to Zach Wilson.
Why aren't you starting Zach Wilson? Like, if you bring back Mike White or whoever, then that becomes a question. But if you've got Aaron Rodgers, there's no questions. And also, I think it salvages Zach Wilson's ego a little bit, just because if he got... Last year, you got beat up by Mike White. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now if you're like, okay, he's going to sit for 2 years and there might be a redemption story there.
And Rodgers is his guy. That's his game. That's who he always looked to. So, it's okay, I could sit behind him. So, yeah. You're all over it.
Good.
Zach
Something
Wilson.
to root for.
Yeah. There we go.
2025 sleeper.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, there we go.
Zach Wilson.
What are the odds on 2025 comeback player of the year? Yeah. Have they shut that line yet?
That's a fair comeback. Yeah, that's a long time.
Speaking of written off quarterbacks, Geno Smith gets the biggest payday of his career. Great for Geno. Seahawks and Geno agree to a contract extension. It's a 3-year, $75 million deal. I mean, that's what Florio explains it as. I know the ticker headline will not say that, but when you really crunch into the numbers, this is essentially a 2-year, $50 million deal. Could be as short as 1 year if Seattle wants to move on after this year. So that's pretty important to me here because Seattle picks 5th in this draft. This is Geno's team this year, we think, but I wouldn't entirely rule out that it's Geno's team for the long term with where Seattle stands.
No, I mean, I talked to a lot of people at the Combine about Seattle and their thinking, and they are doing a deep dive on all the quarterbacks, right? And so it was explained to me hey, and again, this is a week ago, but as it was explained to me hey, it's not a done deal that Geno's coming back. There's a chance that we go with a rookie at 5 and bring back Drew Lock and just have a veteran arm in camp and compete. There's also a chance that we could re-sign Geno. Doesn't mean we're out at a quarterback at 5. To your point, hey, do you what this says is that the Seahawks might be on Anthony Richardson. Right? I mean, Anthony Richardson is somebody who, if you've been sleeping in a rock, just absolutely blew the doors off the roof, so to speak, old phrase from my 06-09 days, at the Combine, just, wowed from all these physical attributes, right? In terms of his size, in terms of his speed, in terms of his athleticism. Most scouts think he is still a bit of a project as a quarterback, but in terms of the potential, it's off the charts. He could be a truly game-changing quarterback if he puts it all together, and there's certainly a chance that he could. And so do you say, you know what, we're going to take Richardson at 5. He'll sit behind Geno for a year, even 2 if we need to, because we've got a guy that we know can get us where we need to go, and then we could develop somebody like Richardson who could be truly a game-changing quarterback.
Absolutely. I think that's the perfect landing spot for Richardson in that scenario. I think it's a plan that Seattle could sell. And then I think ultimately as well, if you're Seattle, you're going to be too good. You're not going to be picking up in that range. Geno led this offense last year. The defense will get right. They will figure that side out. They can run the ball. They have 2 really good wide receivers. Maybe they get a 3rd in this draft. So you have to think of it okay, we like Geno, but we only have this opportunity this year because we're not going to be picking in the top 10 again. And this is a 4-quarterback class. You don't say that every year. Last year, Kenny Pickett went in the 1st round. That was it. So I'm with you all the way.
Late in the 1st round.
Didn't start out of camp. It was a very down quarterback year last year.
And in fact, John Schneider, I went to his press conference, general manager of the Seahawks, and he talked about the fact that he's it's a weird spot for us. For years and years, we've never picked in the top 15 of the draft. We've never picked in that top 12. So it's a weird position for us to be in. And I agree with you. They exceeded expectations last year. Now that they have Geno back. But I also think that they don't believe Geno's the long-term answer because look, if you look at the numbers, like Geno had a really nice year last year, but he tailed off towards the end.
Yep.
And did the league catch up with him a little bit? And now they'll have a whole offseason to sort of look through Geno tape. And, Geno's also on the, look, again, he hasn't played a ton of games, but he's on the wrong side of 30. Obviously, quarterbacks last a long time, and he hasn't got a lot of wear and tear in terms of actual playing time. But that fifth round, that fifth overall pick, as you see there, and we expect some movement there, but, the Texans and Colts, there's two teams ahead of them at the moment that need a quarterback, in the Texans and the Colts. We don't expect the Bears or the Cardinals to draft a quarterback. Now, the Bears obviously may trade down, but it might be just a two. There's talk that the Texans might move into that one spot.
Yeah, the wild card is I've heard the Cardinals are also exploring trading out of that selection as well. So you just wondered, is this a weird draft where we go quarterback, 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 quarterback? It could happen.
Yeah, it certainly could. Like, you wouldn't be shocked if the Panthers trade into the top 5, if the Falcons trade into the top 5. I wouldn't put nothing past my Commanders. Yeah. I mean, they say Sam Howell's QB1, but
we'll see.
But they also said, we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Geno's a weird one because I think you probably project him to be the same level of quarterback as like a Derek Carr or a Daniel Jones next year, but the path that he takes to get there, like those guys are pretty just steady. They're pretty steady. Geno is so up and down, up and down. He makes the best throws in the league, and then he just throws mind-numbing interceptions. And last season, the first 5 weeks of the season, he was an MVP candidate.
Yeah.
Like he was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, then really kind of tailed off towards the end. So you don't know really what's real there. But I think the fact that it is relatively short term, and yes, he is on the wrong side of 30, but I mean, he's 32. He's 2 years younger than Russell Wilson. So I think that, it's going to be an interesting one to watch. But yeah, you wouldn't expect that they're super tied to him as the guy.
Fantasy-wise, I think you're happy about Geno Smith being back. Like, again, this is a guy who had 17 or more fantasy points in 11 of 17 games last year, 12 different games with multiple touchdown passes that tied for the most among quarterbacks as well. He's a top 10 fantasy quarterback on a points per game basis, finished his QB5 in terms of total points. And to the extent that we care about Kenneth Walker and Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, and we do, we know that this offense is going to have a level of consistency and a level of efficiency with Geno Smith under center that will keep their fantasy value afloat.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks are going to be good next year as well, again, because, I mean, they were a playoff team this year with a winning record, and they've got a lot of cap space. They've got this draft capital that will help the defense get better in particular. Like, on BetMGM, they're plus 500 to win the NFC West, and the Rams are plus 250. Like, I would flip that around. I think the Seahawks have higher upside than the Rams for next season.
That's shocking to me.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks are better, and they will be better.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know who's playing quarterback for the Rams.
I was just going to say, I think
that every team in that division.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rams, like as we talk about teams that don't know what they're doing at quarterback, I would argue the Rams are. I know Matthew Stafford went on his wife's podcast and shot down retirement rumors, but I will tell you that at the Combine, I talked with somebody that, I'll just say this, somebody that was at practice every day last year, at Rams practice every day last year, and that person said to me, Stafford could barely throw last year. And again, like, who knows, maybe he feels better in offseason and health and everything like that. But there's also a chance that he comes to August and he's just like,
it's over. It happens.
Right. And and I've said this before, if I'm Matthew Stafford, again, I'm not, and I understand wanting to compete every day, but if I'm Matthew Stafford, I'm like, you're richer than, you're richer than all get out. You have a Super Bowl ring. You are famous. You have young children. You have a great life ahead of you, whatever you want to do. You want to be a broadcaster, you want to be in football, you want to be a coach. Like, Matthew Stafford can do whatever. You want to just sit on an island. I mean, again, like, he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, go enjoy your life, dude. Like, stop getting, like, that offensive line is going to be bad. They don't have a lot of draft capital or even cap room to make a lot of maneuvering. They're
releasing everyone.
They're going to have to. So it's like, do you really want to get your ass kicked in a rebuilding year? Like, dude, you're Matthew Stafford. You're a borderline Hall of Famer. Like, take your Super Bowl ring, take your money, kiss your wife, hug your kids, and go love your life. I mean, like, you know what I mean? I like Matthew Stafford. I'm a Matthew Stafford fan. I'm just like, as somebody who likes that guy and roots for him, I'm just sort of like.
Yeah, Stafford has a Super Bowl ring, though. Matthew Berry's adamant he didn't play well in that Super Bowl. So maybe he wants to come back and prove Matthew Berry wrong and actually play well in a Super Bowl.
By the way, you know who else didn't play well in a Super Bowl and has a Super Bowl ring? Is Peyton Manning. The second Super Bowl, that was entirely the Denver defense. Right? Does anyone sit here and go like, oh, Peyton's got one ring and then one with an asterisk? No, he's got a ring.
Stafford played well in the Super Bowl. He threw the 2 picks, but
we always make our way back to this.
Them down the field.
He had 1 great drive.
Yeah,
okay,
that's fine.
But can you?
Stats are fine.
That's insane. Like he played great in that Super Bowl. I mean, he had 2 picks, but he had 2 picks.
One of them was pretty bad as well.
I mean, like
look at his stats.
In all seriousness, by the way, without a ticky-tack pass interference call, the Bengals win that Super Bowl.
Matthew, he had one of the greatest throws in NFL history, the no-look pass the cup on the game-winning Super Bowl drive. He was 26 of 40, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, took 2 sacks, 90 passer rating. That's fine. It's fine. It wasn't a bad performance. You're going to really die on this.
It's amazing we do make it back to this argument. I'd say like once every 2 months, I think.
Will you rule on this? Do you think...
Was Mahomes any good in the Super Bowl?
All anyone cares about is the game-winning drive.
100%.
Yeah, so that's...
Listen, I'm not saying he was a disaster, but I'm just saying, did Matthew Stafford win that Super Bowl for the Rams, or was it the defensive line? I would argue it was the defensive line. I would argue the defense won that. I would argue Cooper Kupp.
How about both?
I mean, listen, it was a team effort. It was all of those things. It was a team effort. But there are definitely Super Bowls where there are quarterbacks. There's definitely like some Tom Brady Super Bowls where it's just like, guys, everyone on my effing back, we're winning this thing.
Okay.
And I would argue that was not what Matthew Stafford did in that Super Bowl. Okay.
Brady did throw a pick 6 against Atlanta, right? Yeah. I think Stafford was a 7 out of 10. He was a 7 out of 10 in the Super Bowl. You're 7 out of 10 in the Super Bowl. That's fine. That's good for your legacy. Has the throw, has his moment.
I think I would argue a 6, but we're splitting hairs. The point is, he wasn't a 9, he wasn't a 10.
It's true.
On the biggest stage, whatever. He's got a Super Bowl ring. Yeah. I'm saying, don't make me anti-Stafford. I'm pro-Stafford. I like Stafford.
He has to come back now to prove he doesn't have a Mickey Mouse ring. That's what it comes down to now.
Come back. You know what? Come back and then whatever. Right? I mean, you know.
Should we talk to Lamar Jackson?
Yeah. Good transition.
Lamar Jackson doesn't have a Super Bowl ring.
I would like our producers to just realize that, because normally I'm the guy, but I just want to make a note of this here to all the production staff of Fantasy Football Happy Hour, that it was Jay Croucher and Jay Croucher alone that took us way off the rails and completely derailed this segment. I just want everyone to be aware of that, because it definitely was not me, and it certainly wasn't new NBC employee Connor Rogers.
No, me never.
It was Jay
I'm here
Croucher.
just to drive the car.
It's Jay Croucher. Yeah, fantastic.
As we said earlier in the show, we are recording on franchise tag deadline day.
Yeah.
So we are a couple hours out from that. Let's start with the biggest one, the obvious one. The Ravens will tag Lamar Jackson if they can't agree on an extension. It sounds like they are not even close. We've heard Eric DeCosta went down to South Florida. That didn't really get anything done. I don't think the question here, guys, is are they getting a deal done? I think it's what tag is Lamar Jackson getting, and if it's that non-exclusive tag, where does this thing go?
Yeah, I mean, I've been operating under the assumption the entire time that he's going to be back in Baltimore and playing next season. It's just the matter of the mechanic and whether a contract gets signed, which it probably won't. But did you hear anything in Indianapolis, Matthew? Is there a chance that Lamar Jackson is on a different team next year?
There is. So I've heard a bunch of different stuff. There's a lot of smoke around Lamar Jackson. But I'll start with this. And, you know, our friend and colleague Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk put this out there, which is that he thinks, and I've seen a lot of other people echo this line of thinking, that one of the challenges is that they can't get a deal done. You know, that Lamar is representing himself. Lamar does not have a certified NFL agent that represents him. So as a result, because of the way, and this is much more, you know, Florio's lane than mine, but as I understand it, in essence, that means they have to deal with Lamar directly. They can't talk to a friend. You know, they have to. When you're negotiating, you have to talk directly to the player or to a certified NFL agent, and he doesn't currently have one. So they have struggled between what Lamar wants. They've struggled to get a deal done. They've struggled to get a deal done and even come up with a framework of a deal. You know, at the basis of it, Lamar wants a Deshaun Watson deal. Yep. I want 6 years guaranteed. I want $250 million. You know, whatever it is. I'm younger than Watson. I won an MVP. You get the argument. To which Baltimore's thing is like, like I get Watson's deal is an outlier because Cleveland was super desperate, but no other quarterback in the league has a fully guaranteed contract. Not Patrick Mahomes, not Josh Allen, who was drafted in the same class as you. You know, no one has a fully guaranteed contract. We can't do that. That would cripple the franchise. So they're at an impasse, if you will. So I think the thinking is that by putting a non-exclusive franchise tag on Lamar Jackson, what they do is they sort of punt the decision. They basically, okay, say Lamar, now you can go negotiate with any other team. let some other team do the heavy lifting in terms of negotiating the terms of a deal. And once Lamar agrees to terms with another deal, the Ravens will have two choices. They can either match that, great. We've figured out a framework of a deal that Lamar has agreed to, and all we have to do is say, you bet, we'll do that too. Or they get 2 first-round picks. So it makes a lot of sense. It's also, by the way, as I understand it, the average salary for a non-exclusive franchise tag quarterback is in the, I want to say, $35 million range.
It's about $32.6 million.
Right, whereas exclusive is $45 million.
Yeah, it's a jarring jump.
Right. So it's like $12 million they save. So there's that. So we'll see where that is. The other thing is that I've heard from one source, again, and you hear a bunch of different things, who knows, but I hear from one source. I'm not reporting this as news, but this is gossip, just that, that the Ravens are kind of like a little bit fed up with Lamar. Like, they've been trying to get a deal done for 2 years. They can't get a deal done. He has missed a lot of time over the last 2 years. And, one source said to me, like, I don't think a sign and trade is out of the question. Again, we'll see. I don't think that's the likeliest scenario. I think there's maybe a 5% chance of that, 10%, 2%. It's low, but it's not a non-zero chance.
Yep.
Is how it was phrased to me.
Is there any precedent for a quarterback as good and young as Lamar changing teams? Like, I just don't think it just doesn't really happen. And I think if you were to go into next season, you'd have Mahomes as the number 1 guy, and then it's probably Allen and Burrow, and then I would say Lamar might be 4th, like with Hurts and in that range. And the fact that guy is that young, it's a unanimous MVP in 2019, was playing at a borderline MVP level this year until he kind of faded a little bit and then gets hurt. But I think obviously we can't lose sight of how good this goes.
26, I believe.
I'm trying to think if there's anyone.
The first name that came to my mind was like Jay Cutler, but he's not nearly the same class.
Yeah. No, not anywhere close. I mean, Russ is 32.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, obviously his play tailed off significantly last year, but at the time he was traded, no one thought that. Everyone still thought of him as one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, and so, that. He's the closest to me. I feel like
it doesn't really happen, which makes it so unique. And it's because of, largely it has to be because of the no agent situation. And Deshaun Watson has just screwed all of this up.
Yeah.
The fact that, and I think that if other big deals get done with other quarterbacks and more sane and less like Watson's, then maybe that will help trigger something with Lamar. But it's a mess.
I mean, Watson's actually probably the closest comp in terms of, like, Watson's also 25, 26.
Yes.
But obviously played it right. There's obviously extenuating circumstances as to why he left Houston, but yeah, I mean, that's the other, like,
Donovan
big name.
McNabb? Donovan McNabb.
That was a tough. A long list of failed quarterbacks in Washington, and number 5 is one of them.
Kirk Cousins is another kind of name in that list, I guess.
Someone good, good, not great, but he'd be he's been the best quarterback. He's the last good quarterback Washington's ever had.
Yeah.
This is just in a different tier, right? And the unique part is that he doesn't have an agent, and we've heard rumblings of the NFLPA actually pushing him to draw a hard line in the sand and get what he wants.
There is somebody from the NFLPA that I think is advising him, but
they're allowed to do that.
Right, they are allowed to do that, but they can't physically negotiate a deal for him.
Yep.
So when it comes down to that, Lamar's dug in, and apparently the Ravens have offered a pretty high guaranteed number, one of the better guaranteed numbers, but he's dug in on the Watson deal.
Yeah.
And that's why it's gotten nowhere.
I think, and the crazy thing is that if they just bring Lamar back, they can absolutely win the Super Bowl next year. That team played Cincinnati so tough in the playoffs without Lamar Jackson, and then you look what Cincinnati did the following 2 weeks against the Bills, destroying them and then taking the Chiefs to the absolute limit. Like, Lamar comes back to that team. They've got a lot of cap space as well,
and
like,
their first
relatively
rounder.
for a contender. They'll get a receiver. This offseason. They have to. And then all of a sudden, they're just absolutely stacked.
Could they get a Hopkins?
If they have Lamar Jackson.
Like, that changes everything.
Yep.
Hopkins, I've heard they're in on Alan Lazard.
There you
go. That was a phrase that was thrown around. My nipples are hard for Alan Lazard.
It's the open of the article.
Yep, that was the open of the article. And then I was like, well, whose
terrifying.
Nipples are hard for Alan Lazard? And the Ravens were one of the teams that I've heard have hard nipples for Alan Lazard. Yeah.
So does Connor Rogers.
Yep.
That's just because he works out.
Yeah. Does work.
The balance of both.
Yeah.
Moving on to another quarterback related to the franchise tag deadline, that would be Daniel Jones.
I suppose we should talk. There's no fantasy impact of Lamar. I mean, because we just don't know
We don't
until
know.
where he lands.
Yeah.
But it will. wherever he lands, whether it's back with Baltimore or another team, it will change the NFL landscape in a significant manner.
Yep.
So this one really does have a fantasy impact because if the Giants and Daniel Jones cannot come to an agreement, which they've been trying, they've apparently been working through the night. His agents have come into town and they haven't gotten it done yet. Then they have to tag Daniel Jones. And the fantasy impact is Saquon Barkley gets to enter the open market.
Right.
And that can have a Saquon ripple effect. That can have a Giants offense ripple effect. And I don't think it's different from Lamar where nobody's offer sheeting, we don't think, Daniel Jones and trading 2 first-rounders. But this is a scenario that has a huge impact on the Giants and fantasy in general.
Everything I heard at the Combine, though, is that they're working towards a deal, that they're getting close, that they, Daniel Jones' team threw out a crazy number. The Giants are like, whoa, 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 whoa. And now they're coming closer to closer. I think it's still going to be, but by the way, Derek Carr getting the number he did, Geno Smith getting the number he did, Daniel Jones is, is younger and has had as
25
much.
25 years old.
He's right. 25 years old with as much, if not more, success than Carr and Geno Smith. So, he's going to be north of 30 easily. This could be a $35 million a year deal, could be even bigger than that.
Well, I don't think he's had as much success as Carr, but he's got more upside than Carr the rest of the way because of his age. You think Daniel Jones had more success than Derek Carr? Derek Carr's been around for a while.
I know, but Derek Carr's won 1 playoff game. Has he even? I don't think Derek Carr's won a playoff game.
He had the 12-4 season, but he got hurt right at the end. The year that Khalil Mack won Defensive Player of the Year. Carr's been around a while. He's compiled a lot of stats.
Statistically,
he's more
yes.
proven statistically.
Of course, statistically, there's no question about it. But whatever. Daniel Jones with the right coach led his team to a playoff game, and a playoff win, by the way. Derek Carr lost to the Bengals in the first round. Now, listen, inadvertent whistle. I think the Raiders got screwed in that game, but that's a rant for another day. The fact is that Daniel Jones has a playoff win, and off the top of my head, I don't believe Derek Carr does.
No.
Was sort of my thought process there.
That's fair. And Daniel Jones, that game against Minnesota, that's probably better than anything Derek Carr has done in a high leverage game, in a playoff game, certainly.
Whether Carr is better, whether Daniel Jones is better, the fact is that, it's close. It's close. Daniel Jones is also 5 years younger.
Yep. No, he's definitely the better kind of projecting forward. He should be the better quarterback.
I wonder if the Carr deal getting done set a floor for this deal. When the agents look at it and go, the framework where it's 2 years of guaranteed money, if Jones comes back down to earth a little bit, we can get out of the deal. But the upside is if he keeps developing, we're actually getting value. So I'd be curious to see where this number comes in at if it gets done.
But I know that's what they want to do, is they want to franchise. In an ideal world, they get deals done with both Barkley and Jones, but worst case, get a long-term deal with Jones done and franchise tag Barkley.
You tag the running back. That's the play. Because the number's at 10.1 mil.
Right. It's like whatever.
Who cares?
Which is what what the Raiders did with Josh Jacobs.
Yep. And I would not want to be in the business of giving Saquon a long-term deal.
No, I agree.
Yep.
No. I actually think he comes back to New York regardless. Even if he has to test free agency, I don't think anyone's going to pay massive money for Saquon Barkley. You never know, I suppose, but it feels weird to think that a team would pay significantly more money to Saquon than the Giants would be willing to. And you're in New York, you're building something there.
He's the face of the franchise.
Yeah.
And he's obviously got so much history there. He did tail off at the end of the season after starting incredibly well. And he had a great season overall, but certainly wouldn't be banking on that every single year.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.